Welcome to the big debate. I'm Masachaba Lekalake. Rhodes has fallen, or rather his statue at the University of Cape Town is gone. Thousands of black and some white students were sick and tired of being watched over by the main man of British colonialism in the Cape. But will Rhodes's removal help black children to get a college education? And what does Rhodes's falling actually mean for the way that all South Africans live together? To debate this, I'm joined by Kumani. You can also join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Take a look at this.
Arrived from Britain in 1870 and made his fortune from De Beers, the diamond company he founded. An ardent colonialist, he once told the Cape Parliament the native is to be treated as a child and denied the franchise. Fast forward to March 2015, thousands of students staged protests and sit-ins demanding the statue come down.
What the students are demanding is that the
Mahlubi, clearly there is a very tangible sort of anger on the ground, and it doesn't seem to be going away. The idea of the Rainbow Nation doesn't feel to have trickled down to where it matters most, and that's with the youth of South Africa. Has government failed in its idea of transformation?
Well, yeah, to me, my response would be, in as far as what the department has done, no, we haven't failed, but we'll be the first to accept that there's still a lot that needs to be done.
How long do you envisage that it will take to transform the staffing and management within universities in South Africa?
In some aspects, it should have changed already. In some aspects, our institutions have been very slow and reluctant, some of them. But in some aspect, we need to be careful, you know, because you don't just want to transform and replace professionals who are there, or academics who, you know, who've got the knowledge and also the skills and the experience.
Adam, I mean, there is absolutely no excuse for Wits to be so white. When can we begin to see a bigger representation of black teachers and management of over 50%?
So let's decode that. There are a couple of things. One is at our staffing level, we're probably about 80% black at the administrative and professional staff.
Let's talk about management.
Well, at the management level, at the senior management level, the top 10 positions, 7 are black at the moment.
Right. But
let me finish.
Okay, got to get the statistics correct.
Right, so
the whole of management.
The whole of senior management.
The whole of senior management.
The whole of senior management, and that depends how you define it. If you're looking at director level up.
According to your statistics, 50% are white.
At the top end, senior management level, what you have is 50% white. At the academic level, it's 70, probably 65 to 70% white. Now the question is, why 21 years after the transition are we in that position?
All right, answer your own question if you may, please, sir.
The first is, you cannot have professors and associate professors if you don't have black PhD and master students. In the 1990s, we were putting too little money into postgraduate scholarships. So the only people who ended up going to do postgraduates are people who could afford it, and upper middle class people in the South African context are white and Indian. And then it seems to me that there has been not enough pressure from unions and others on changing that. So it seems to me that this is a shared problem.
Kumani, do you buy this?
Well, I mean, as Rhodes must fall, we are not pleased with that. I mean, the very notion of transformation. What do you mean, Professor, by transformation? We don't know. You know, what do you mean? I'm sure you've got a different meaning from us as black students. We live the realities. Therefore, we don't know. You're speaking vague to us. Now,
what do you mean by transformation?
Hence, for us, we are using decolonization. Decolonize. Transformation, the term itself is not ours. The moment the term becomes embraced by white people, it becomes a problem. Now we reinvent. Now we're reinventing now decolonization, and when we reinvent that, we are saying black first. That's our position. Point of departure.
White's out.
Sorry?
White's out.
No. Don't talk on behalf of us.
And I'm asking.
No. Okay? One of the successes of Rhodes Must Fall was to be able to tell white people to do what we want them to do. We told the University of Cape Town, remove the statue. Within a month, they removed it. Because to us as black people, it was insultive. And as part of that, those progressive white students within us, we told them to sit down and listen. And they sat down and listened. And those who were not prepared, we kicked them out without an apology. That's our success. Now, when we say decolonize, transform decolonize the whole structure of the university. Hence, we're saying at UCT, the Senate, the council is the problem. At UCT, you've got Hugh Amo, the registrar of UCT, who was the registrar during Apartheid. How do you expect such a person to transform a university? Hence, we are saying transform decolonize that.
All right, Ernst, you seem to be slightly uncomfortable with this. Am I reading your body language wrong?
No, you're reading it correctly. I think personally I have an interest in the history of Cecil John Rhodes because my great-grandfather was almost killed in one of the British concentration camps. So I believe that Afrikaners as a community also have a very strong opinion, negative opinion of Cecil John Rhodes. But despite my personal opinions, I was not rejoiced when I saw you on the news vandalizing the statue. I was not rejoiced by the UCT this remove the statue campaign because I think it's disingenuous. Because
Why do you
not
say it's disingenuous?
Well, in the first place, this campaign was inundated with racist, anti-white slogans. You yourself have been expelled for that.
All right, let's give him a chance to speak.
The second reason is I've never heard you guys complaining about...
Slut? Which slut? A racist slut? Which one? Just cite
You
one.
can read the news. You can read your disciplinary documents.
But let Ernst finish, but in all fairness, you need to be prepared to articulate your point. Ernst, go ahead.
No, but he knows. He's just trying to get me off.
It's not about me, it's about the audience.
In a second.
This is a man who said white people are not welcome on the campus, that white people must leave, who allegedly, according to media reports, which you deny, who allegedly said that white people need to be killed. So that's the one reason. The second reason is I've never heard you complaining about names or statues that are offensive to minority communities where they really have a reason to complain. One example, the renaming of the main street of Amanzimtoti to Andrew Zondo. Andrew Zondo was an ANC Youth League member. He planted a bomb in the shopping center. He killed 2 ladies and 3 children. Now they renamed the main street after him. That's an offensive name because there are people living in that town who have been murdered by the man after which the mainstream has been renamed.
All right, Ernst, but do you accept that things must change?
What do you mean when you say things must change?
I mean
think
exactly that. I mean that it is high time that we see greater representation of black people in senior management positions. It's high time that we see more black students in universities. Do you accept that?
You're going to... Let me qualify before I answer because you're going to quote me out of context. Yes, universities must be inclusive. Black people need to have access. They need to have more access to universities. But the problem with this transformation debate is that the focus is on the wrong place. It's an output-based focus. We're saying if 90% are black and 8% are white and so forth, then we have achieved equality.
No, that's not what we're saying. That is not what we're saying. We're saying let's give equal opportunity to students,
action policy is based on.
Students who've worked hard enough to make it into university, not to be isolated out of these institutions because of money.
White and black
Shahira, help us.
Access, yes.
Well, I think, Ernst, I really disagree with your terminology of using or saying that the Cecil John Rhodes statue was vandalized. Firstly, because ideologically, when you look at the person that Cecil John Rhodes was and what he stood for, black students throwing poo at his statue is not vandalism.
According to the law,
it's justice. It's justice. He deserved every bit of poo that was thrown at his statue.
What Ernst has just done is absolutely out of order. We can't allow the likes of him and AfriForum to take our focus away from decolonization and tell lies about our history. There is no way Andrew Zondo can be regarded as a terrorist. He knows that himself. Rhodes Must Fall has put decolonization on the table. Now we must attend to that in a very substantive way. There must be a clear focus on how we finance education, such that actually it is free up to university level.
One of the successes of colonialism and apartheid was the epistemicide or the destruction of the indigenous languages. When we want to deal effectively with matters such as transformation, it would mean that it must start when children are still at kindergartens, as to how can we now groom children in an African way. And we must not listen to the honorable gentleman from the Department of Higher Education, because he's misleading the country, he's misleading young people. It is disingenuous of him to say that as the government they haven't achieved. In the University of Witwatersrand, where Professor Habib is a vice chancellor of, you had 54,000 applications. Spaces that were available, it was 6,400. Now, if you say that doors of learning and education are open to young people of this country, what do you mean?
So let me give you the real numbers. We had 60,000 applications, 5,800 places. You think that's bad? You applied to medical school, we have 9,000 applications, 200 places. And that replicates itself in institution after institution. So those are the real numbers. But I think we need two sets of conversation. One is on the transformation question. I believe in decolonization. I believe in majority rule at student and staff level. I believe that we should decolonize the curriculum. Having said that, I think we must do so thoughtfully. Because somebody said in that opening panel, you can't decolonize the university if you haven't decolonized the society. And that's what I find when people throw rhetorical tools, transform, indigenize languages, without thinking how you do it. How do you finance higher education in a context where the state has been underfunding higher education for 20 years?
Fair enough. Panache, so it isn't really Adam's fault, is it?
First of all, there's a condescension of saying that students don't think through what they're saying when we say decolonize. Then to use it to say, hold on, just wait, is a problem. So I would not like to be have my words used out of context in that way. I don't mean just wait, because we've been waiting for 21 years.
Yeah, in all fairness though, should we not be partly blaming the government for not funding enough students?
Beyond funding, I think, first of all, we have an issue starting right at 1994, because we have an issue when we talk about transformation, we say, it's saying add blacks and stir, right? That's what you're saying. You don't actually change, right? Because he's saying he's got 7 out of 10 in the management is black. But understand that those blacks are still colonized, because those are the ones who continue to perpetuate the same kind of racist institutions, right? When we talk about decolonization, it's also a mindset. We're talking about the intangible. It's also about our mindset.
So I'm also just a little bit confused, because you call yourself a coconut. Why is that?
So when I speak about coconuts, I understand that I'm the kind of person who the Rainbow Nation loves, right? Because I speak so well. People like myself are often co-opted into these things, right? People say, oh, she speaks so well, she's not like other blacks, right? And some of us enjoy those positions. We like not to be like other blacks. We like to be separated, and we get used, right?
So are you saying that 7 out of 10 in the senior management are being used?
Who funds the university? Who's on the Senate Council? Who actually makes the decisions at the end of the day? So I might have a position as a black person, but do I actually have power? Which is why we problematize things like BEE, because we have a lot of black people sitting as CEOs, but do they actually have power to affect any change? They don't.
All right, thank you very much.
One of the challenges is the universities themselves, because they undermine the black academics. Universities don't give black academics opportunities to become professors. But I think to go further, I think it's important when we talk about transformation to think that the color is a proxy for transformation. That is very dangerous. For instance, the DA, the fact that we've got Musima Emane, that does not mean it's transformation. It means assimilation. And we must understand the difference.
Not everyone, by the way, especially not every black student is for Rhodes Must Fall. Absolutely. Why is that?
I do not like how it was conducted. I feel like it could have been done in a less undignified manner. Yes.
How? What do you mean by that specifically? Do you mean by defacing the statues, or you mean defacing the statues with poo particularly?
Actually, both.
Okay.
I don't think they should have been defaced in the first place. Maybe we could have had like conversations before and whatnot.
But I think they've been having conversations.
You cannot determine how people have to protest. Yes. If you decide your form of your protest is to throw whatever, I agree with the social movement against Rhodes.
But Bandile, the ANC has to take responsibility for not transforming the universities.
It's not necessarily true.
The ANC has to take responsibility for not transforming society.
No, let's cut in. It's important to say that I think I agree with Prof here when he says that people who undermine the complex nature of the 1994 breakthrough in necessary fact mean that they don't understand what was going on in the country. The good thing about the campaign on Rhodes Must Fall is that it has brought us to a debate to say that little transformation has happened. How do we accelerate it?
Let's leave it right there. When we return, we talk about the connection between Rhodes and Mandela. Intrigued? Then don't go away. Welcome back to The Big Debate. That was a clip from comedy TV show ZA News poking fun at white reactions to Rhodes Must Fall. But seriously, what impact will the student movement that brought down Rhodes have on race relations and on our society and on our economy? Ernst, you were laughing. It's good to know you've got a sense of humor. But, you know, it is a little bit ridiculous to hold on to old statues.
That's a ridiculous statement to make, with all due respect. We have this campaign now to remove statues, and we had all this vandalism, which some people disagree with the fact that it was vandalism. And the argument that we often hear is, yes, but it happened in other places of the world as well, where the Germans took down statues of Hitler and so forth. But there's two differences. The one difference is those statues were actually taken down by the people whose forefathers put them up there. That's the one difference. And the other difference is that the debate is narrated by what's happening in politics in South Africa at the moment. So we might, in 10 or 20 years, have a situation where, for example, the EFF governs the country, and they decide, no, Nelson Mandela was a sellout, so we're going to pull down the Nelson Mandela statue as well.
That will be complex. However, it will be the democratic right of a future generation to represent itself in however way it feels, so long as it's rational, democratic, and really thought through. I don't have a problem with removing even Mandela. However, the point I was going to make is that the AfriForum and others have really made themselves irrelevant to this debate, because what it ignores is the fact that that Rhodes Must Fall moment actually challenged a number of thinking white students to really think through their privilege, through their history, acknowledge it, and then take the decision to move on. I think that's the kind of white people we need to have this debate with, not the AfriForum of the kinds we have.
All right, let's talk about this quote from Utata Nelson Mandela, and I'm going to read it for you. We are sometimes still asked by people how we could agree to have our name linked to that of Cecil John Rhodes in this Mandela Rhodes initiative. To us, he said, the answer is easy. For us to come together across historical divides to build our country together. He says, I'm sure that Cecil John Rhodes would have given his approval to this effort to make the South African economy of the early 21st century appropriate and fit for its time. Panache, what are your thoughts on this quote?
I think it's very upsetting that Mandela's voice is continually used to silence black voices, that every time we want to speak about black pain,
That's not true.
every time we want to speak about black pain,
Wait, let's let her finish.
every time we want to speak about black pain, he's used across the spectrum by those who don't want to say, but Madiba would have wanted this, right? That's all we continue to hear this time and time and again. And I'm actually getting quite upset right now because of the way in which I feel suffocated. And I think, yes, Rhodes would approve because it means it's preserved his wealth. That's why he would have approved of the situation right now. So even this equality, you know, we all want non-racialism, but it's not feasible to speak about it as long as black people are still on the back foot, as long as you're still sitting on top of me. I cannot talk about equality right now.
Tato, as a transgender woman, you say that transformation is not only about race. Tell me about this.
We have to be cognizant of how privilege works, right? and like we have to problematize this panel. The fact that there's so many black cis head males speaking on the revolution. Trans, queer women have a huge stake in the revolution. And that's my position, that at the end of the day, Nelson Mandela was a black cisgender, like heterosexual man. And like, I don't think that he was, like, where is that code on my trans reality as a black queer woman? So we have to be cognizant of the fact that in this revolution, we're putting, we're centering certain voices. But when we stand up as queer people and say that we're standing up against this oppression, not just as black people, but as queer people, like we're divided. So those are the questions I'm interested in.
All right, fantastic. Sir, you've had your hand up for quite some time.
I think personally, we need to clarify one thing here. Black love is not white hate. So by loving my own, it doesn't mean I hate white people. And then Father Fanon, the late Father Fanon, teaches us that each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it. Now, our generational mission is more of the psyche than that of the late Bikos and stuff. Theirs was to revolt against the system. Ours is to discover a national culture, a way in which we will live together. So in saying, no, we want to shy away from Western modernity or Eurocentrism, or we want now to accommodate more black students into institutions of higher learning, I don't see how is it wrong if we say black people first and white people after. Because now black people have been oppressed for 500 years.
All right, it would be nice to hear from some more black women.
Can I say this?
Before we do.
In us moving forward, it doesn't mean that you rubbish what was done in the past. I mean, because I think some of the argument here is taking that direction. You know, Mandela was in a certain era. He did the things that he had to do at the time. You must live now and try and craft your way forward, as he has just said.
Rhodes Must Fall is spearheaded by young people who had access to tertiary institutions. Their parents didn't have access to tertiary institutions. And these are young people who are born into a democracy, and all people would have us believe that you must be grateful that you live in a democracy, that you even have access to tertiary institutions. Why are you complaining when you're at UCT, when you're at WITS, when you're at Stellenbosch? And yet we're not buying into the Rainbow Nation project. And that's something that's important. And being in tertiary institutions where you're otherized, being in tertiary institutions where the space is violent, where you feel like you cannot learn, you cannot go forward because you have a white professor who doesn't want to call you Zamantongwa. And if you write an essay, for example, where it's a 90 essay, they'll think, who wrote that for you? They will not give you 90%. And that's problematic. And you find that at all these universities. So Rhodes Must Fall says we need to have a conversation, not just as young people, but as a people. Yes, we have democracy, but young people aren't buying into this democracy. So even when we say that Mandela has done a lot, don't silence our anger. We're angry because when him and I apply for a job, he's more likely to get it than me. And in the event that we both get it, he's going to get paid more than I'm going to get paid. And right now he's picking up his hand. He's probably going to talk about probably going to talk about affirmative action and BEE and how a lot of white people aren't getting jobs, but he's still getting paid way more than me. When I get paid, money has to go home. So let's not even, and we haven't even touched on black tax, right? He got a car probably in matric as a present. I have to buy my own car. So I start working. You're in debt when you start working because you have to pay
You're making all these allegations about me.
Wait. Give her a chance to speak.
How well do you know me?
We'll give you a chance to speak. Let her finish.
He's saying I'm making assumptions and accusations about, let's not make it about you, Ernst, the individual, but who you're representative of. Because when I said it's also not about me, but it's also about the community that I speak from, right? And that's what Rhodes Must Fall has put on the agenda.
After the break, we hear from a radical student. Welcome back to the big debate. I'm Masachaba Lekalake. We're talking about student activism on racism and inequality and the fall of Cecil John Rhodes. Now, here in Johannesburg, a student hit the headlines recently when he made some very controversial statements about Adolf Hitler. Some accused him of hate speech. His name is Mncebo Dlamini. Listen to this.
We said that we love Adolf Hitler, certain elements of the man, that he made the Nazi youth to be disciplined behind an ideal, whether the ideal is wrong or right.
What you're seeing behind me is the
black supremacy and black power, in that I want to see the black youth taken out of abject poverty. The same abject poverty that they are pushed by the same white supremacy and the same white people. It's difficult for me to speak on white youth because they are enjoying white privilege. They have businesses, they have assets. We as the black youth, we don't own business, we don't own assets, we don't own land. In as much as we graduate with them in that university, when we go to workplace, they earn better than us.
Mcebo is very right to be angry as a black student. However, he is wrong to appreciate Hitler because Sobukwe, Mandela, Sisulu never made that mistake. But also because Sobukwe and others did not stand for black supremacy. In fact, Sobukwe actually spoke about humanity and the liberation of human beings and Africans playing their role in that regard. So I think as much as we are angry and oppressed, we need to avoid populism of the kind that could be opened up by what Mcebo has said.
Adam, Mcebo was dismissed from the WITS SRC, although we have to acknowledge that it wasn't for his statements on Hitler. But certainly you and many others found this statement to be abhorrent.
Yes, I absolutely do. I find it abhorrent when somebody says that I identify, even in partial terms, with a fascist who was responsible for genocide. And I find it really problematic that people who describe themselves as progressive would say we can identify with that thought. What I would imagine, and what people are entirely accurate about, is that they have a right to be angry, that there hasn't been enough transformation. And Mcebo's right when he says, when the black student, in the majority of cases, when they leave that university, they are on an unequal playing field.
Shahira, what are your views on this?
I think I'd want to really thank Mcebo. The reason why I'd like to thank him is because he's highlighted the very fundamental problem with the society we live in. That a statement, someone's freedom of expression, whether you agree with it or not, and I disagree with him on his views on Hitler, whether you agree with it or not, his statement on Hitler got more publicity and more recognition and caused more anger than a child who fell into an open toilet and drowned in that sewage. It got more attention than more than 2,000 students being financially excluded from Wits University. That is the problem.
We're keen to know, Kumani and Ramabina, what your position is. Are you going to distance yourselves from Mcebo?
As Rhodes Must Fall, at a meeting with him here in Johannesburg, we said to him, Mcebo, we disagree with you on this position of loving Hitler, okay? We cannot use Hitler as an example for our mobilization of our people. Now, we support Mcebo on many issues that they have said in relation to a black child condition. Now, the VC is being disingenuous here. He disciplined Mcebo on the basis of a bad conduct, which is a fight between a black student and him. The question is, who are you acting on behalf when you're dismissing him?
I am acting on behalf of the SRC Constitution, which says that if you are found guilty of an offense by an appropriately structured disciplinary hearing, then you are no longer allowed to be a member of the SRC. Now, by the way, just imagine what we've done. We've asked Mcebo to stand down. I have not asked him to stand down as a student because there was a request for an expulsion. And we argued that there was an error, he must be accountable, and he must particularly be held accountable as SRC president. And if we are talking about transformation, and you want to put Wits on the limelight, we released a statement, a 50 million fund for the appointment of African and colored staff, a new process around curriculum reform. In the last year, 20% of seats in medical school reserved for rural students. 20% of seats in medical school reserved for quintile 1 and 2 students.
Look, the first thing is this. The Vice-Chancellor, you are not the person who's supposed to implement the SRC Constitution. The Council can hold the SRC accountable, but then student governance should be holding itself accountable. There's a separation of powers. What you should have done is send the SRC a letter and said that this is the outcome of a tribunal. SRC, your constitution saying this, what do you have to say?
Next, we get a final word from our studio audience. This is, welcome back to the big debate on the fall of Cecil John Rhodes.
Decolonialism, for me, needs to be some kind of a double movement. So as we destroy the statues that represent colonialism, we need to affirm our African heroines and heroes. So as a Wits student, I have a problem with Wits University not celebrating Robert Sobukwe, who not only was a student at Wits, but taught at Wits during apartheid. We don't celebrate Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who was the first health social worker in this country. So those people need to rise.
I think that for transformation to occur, we as the students need to effect change within the management. They might be black because our vice chancellor is black, but at the end of the day, she's able to call police to come and gun down students that are financially excluded, because although the ANC might say that we have NSFAS in play, we are funding the students, but at the end of the day, they are not funding the students because you've got about 4,000 students who are financially excluded, and yet the government is not doing anything about it. But when a statue is then taken down, then we can have all this media all around it. But when students are taken out of schools from learning from a future, from becoming a PhD from having a PhD, then it's a problem. Thank you.
I believe as a young people, we are responsible to define our own struggle. And standing here and being the part of this debate, I don't know whether after this I will be subjected to disciplinary hearing or what for being here.
I'd like to draw to the attention of the Vice-Chancellor, Adam Habib, that a moratorium on the hiring of white professors is necessary. Secondly, I think Adam Habib is a great guy. I would love to grab a beer with him sometime after work. But I think his tactics of intimidation are necessary. Using emotion whilst debating is totally unnecessary. Threatening us with exclusion and expulsion is totally unnecessary, which is a daily occurrence at Wits University, by the way.
People like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, fought for political freedom. Our struggle right now is for economic freedom. And also the freedom in terms of our minds. We need to be proud of who we are. We need to understand who we are. We are now politically free. Let's free our mind and also become economically free. Thank you.
Okay, I'm from the University of Pretoria, which I call the epitome of black slavery. It's the university that oppresses black people the most in South Africa. We're facing problems where even the staff, the ground workers, which are the security guards, the cleaners, we cannot communicate or interact with them. The university has strict laws which they have put into place that say students must not interact with those people. My father right here says the government has done something about it, which it's actually the union building very close to our institution, but they never come down. I invite all movements, Rhodes movement, I invite them wherever they are to come and join us at Black Thursday at the University of Pretoria to say enough is enough.
Can white people just stop thinking they're important? Because what Ernest is saying now, he's saying in Germany, what had to happen was that the descendants of the people that had put up the statues decided that they will take them down. He's effectively saying we must wait for descendants of white colonial settlers to come and say that they must take the, I mean, whose continent is this, guys? I mean, like, I'm very... So in closing, I'm putting a challenge. This is a challenge, Moss. You know, do not take this personally, because when we talk about these systems, white people think we are taking them personally. I am talking about a system of white supremacy. And whether or not you identify with this, you benefit from it. And so what you need in closing to do is to please open your mind. Decolonize your mind. Decolonization is also for white people. Thank you very much.
When we return, the last word from our panel. I must come back to the big debate. Let's have a last word from our panel.
Number one, black students are not the minority at the University of Pretoria. That's factually incorrect. Number two, if you make statements saying things like Africa is black people's continent and white people should behave, that in fact is racist, but I don't think you realize your own racism. Thirdly, you said you feel you want to suffocate when you hear these Mandela quotes. If you want to experience suffocation, you should try driving down the street to work every day in a street that was named after the man who murdered your brother or your mother, because that's what happened. That's what happened with the Manzin. That's what happened in the Manzin 30. I want to give an example of what happened to a member of ours, a white girl who received admittance to study at the University of Stellenbosch, I believe Stellenbosch. And she received a letter afterwards saying, I'm sorry, we have to withdraw you the fact that you were admitted to study at this university because we thought you were black. Now we realize you're white, so you can't come and study here anymore. But that apparently is not on the agenda. If we want to say we want to promote equality, it's fine, but we need to make a paradigm shift. We're arguing about statistics on university level, while 80% of our primary schools are dysfunctional, while the majority of black students going to school for the first time don't understand the language that they are being taught in. So that's where the problem lies. And lastly, I was asked to change my mindset. Neither me nor
you were asked to open your mind.
To open my mind. Neither me nor AfriForum wants to stand in the way of any young black South African with their aspirations. You should fulfill those aspirations. The only thing that I'm asking for is that in doing so, we also protect minority rights, which is a basic fundamental of democracy, and that we can ensure that different communities also experience that they can prosper in this country.
And if I may just ask Ernst, have you taken away anything positive from this discussion in light of the student who said he's pleading with you to open your mind?
Well, I think it's healthy. I think we need to have these debates. I think the audience is very hostile, and it doesn't appear to be.
You haven't answered my question.
No, I couldn't. I think I would have been able to take back more if the people participating in this debate were more open-minded, were able to listen, were willing to listen without trying to interrupt me.
All right, Rhodes must fall. Your final words, please.
In the spirit of Rhodes must fall, I don't own monopoly of knowledge. I'll give my brother to respond the final response.
The mere fact that we equate transformation with decolonization and continue to have this conversation as if it's what the Rhodes must fall ignited. This is not our debate. We are not here to speak about transformation, because to transform it means to adopt to a system which does not accommodate you. Secondly, I wanted to speak about, even within the movement, we have pioneered the gender question. We are beyond the statue issues. We have tapped into how we can heal our communities through our three pillars, which is black consciousness, Pan-Africanism, black feminism. This is where we draw our inspiration. And thirdly, I wanted to speak about the role of the state in the institution and our understanding within the Rhodes must fall that the state and its constitution is anti-black. From its inception, it was never meant to accommodate that, but to perpetuate the very same misery that we find ourselves. So in trying to decolonize, we first start from a premises that the state is nothing but a committee to protect the interests of the elites. And the institution in the same thing is there to preserve the status quo in the society. So what you find in UCT that is untouchable because of private funding, because of the white interests which are pumped in this institution.
Shahira Kala, Acting President, SRC Wits.
So I think there's a number of things I'd like to say in closing. The first is that, yes, Ernst, Cecil John Rhodes does belong in our history, but he belongs in an Apartheid museum. We need to contextualize this. He doesn't belong at the entrance of one of the best universities in Africa, UCT. That is a space that should be given to somebody who actually deserves to be there and who is respected and looked up to by the students at the institution. To the VC, I'd like to say that there's this constant pattern of using money and using government subsidies and the lack of those to sort of justify the place that we're in at Wits. And I don't think it's fair. It's a cop-out. Our responses to problems that are institutional and problems that are structural in our country are not good enough. And that is why we need to be throwing poo at these statues. That is why we need to be doing what we're doing here today.
Mahlubi Mabizela, Department of Higher Education.
Thank you very much. There's still a lot that needs to be done, and also from the side of government, not just generally. You may have noticed we had an advert of that had all the logos of the university.